Hello, YouTubers. Joe Kersey here on Monday, May 25th, 2015. What I like to call faux Memorial Day, because the true Memorial Day, of course, is on May 30th, not some arbitrarily convenient weekend. And it's about 13:40 in the afternoon Eastern Daylight Time. Now, yesterday, our good neighbor Liz came over and brought us this Sam Adams Rebel IPA, which I had not had before, and it's a daggone good beer. So I highly recommend it. And no, I'm not being sponsored and all that kind of stuff. So check it out. I hadn't seen this in the stores. I think, well, she's got a little bit of a connection, so that was very kind of her to bring over a 6-pack of that. I've been working my way through the remnant of that here today. Now, I got, much to my delight, after Liz left, I mean, yesterday was kind of a full day. You had Pentecost and Skyping with Tony, and Liz came over, and then, after Liz left, I got this series of emails from sort of my best high school friend, who lives out in Southern California now, and his dad's in his 90s now, and still just going strong, and they talk pretty much every day, and this man had happened upon some material from the Warren County Historical Association. I grew up in Warren County, Ohio, Lebanon, Ohio, and it's in Southwest Ohio. And one of the stories had to do with my uncle. My great uncle John Kersey, and he was the brother of my dad's grandfather. He was also a physician, and he lived on top of a bluff over the Little Miami River in Oregon, Ohio. Now, he was on the side of the Little Miami River toward Lebanon, so he would be considered on the west side of the river. Yeah. So I got thinking back about this man, and there are two basic stories about Uncle John, or Great Uncle John. Is that on holidays, but basically any day that had sufficient wind, but on holidays particularly, he would try to do this. He would fly a very large box kite that he had made. It was about 10 feet tall, and he would hang a lantern in it, and he would fly this thing out over the Little Miami River gorge, off the bluff where he lived, and the people in the town below just got the hugest charge out of that. Obviously, well, I know. Obviously, I mean they did get a huge charge out of it, and that was one story. And then the second story is this. When I was finishing up medical school, you have to start applying for residencies. And at that time, I thought I wanted to be a surgeon. At that time, all my electives I'd taken in medical school were surgical electives and so forth. And I had applied, of course, to Ohio State, where I eventually trained. And then I'd also applied to University of Cincinnati, Jewish Hospital in Cincinnati and Bethesda Hospital in Cincinnati. Because I thought, we'll just see, And this story involves University of Cincinnati interview. At that time, the University of Cincinnati surgical program was run by a fellow named Dr. Altemeyer. And he was getting on. He was probably up, I don't know how old he was, but he was getting up there, which has nothing to do with his head. He was considered a giant in terms of surgical infection. His major hobby horse at the time I encountered this man was he would use high-dose penicillin and tetracycline on these very difficult infections, these mixed difficult surgical infections. And he was having good results with that. I don't know where that stands right now. I think that may be considered passé, but I'll tell you at the time it was considered it really worked. And I think one of the reasons why it sort of became passé was, and people poo-pooed it, was because, first of all, it's dirt cheap. It's penicillin and tetracycline. It's not some very, very, very expensive drug. Or a combination of, it's two dirt cheap drugs. And it's, I've always said, and I'll say it again, I've maybe not said it here in this forum very much, but it's not what you give, it's how you give what you get. How you give the drug matters actually a lot more than the drug you're using itself. And he was very aggressive with this stuff. And it worked. So much for this man's CV. So I go down for the interview. So I drove down from Columbus. I left around, a little bit before 4 in the morning because I had to be there at 6 o'clock in the morning for this interview. And I duly showed up outside this man's door at 6 o'clock in the morning. I waited. And then the chief surgical resident shows up at 6:30. And he has in his hand a tray, like a cafeteria tray. And on that tray is a cup of coffee. And he was going to give that cup of coffee to Dr. Altemeyer, who did then show up about 6:45. Now, just let's put this in perspective a bit for you. This chief surgical resident, this was a 7-year program. This was not like your 4-year program. This is a 7-year program. And when you came out of it, you were board certified or could become board certified in, of course, general surgery, thoracic surgery, and orthopedic surgery. And it was every other night call, right from the get-go. Every other night call. And most of those nights, you're going to be up most of those nights. Think what that lack of sleep does to your head after 7 years of this stuff. So here's this man who's gone through this program. He's getting ready to finish. He's about 6 months away from finishing. He's standing outside this office door with a cup of coffee on a tray. Well, that told me something right away. So the day was a good day. I mean, I spent the entire day with this man, and we made rounds on all his patients. We discussed every single patient, and it wasn't just like chat about. It was like, what do you think about this? What information you want to know? I mean, he really was doing a good probing of how I thought and so forth. And it was very, very enjoyable. Very enjoyable. The man was not an asshole at all, by the way. I mean, just completely courteous, gracious, real old school. And then, you know, we went through the three hospitals of the University of Cincinnati system there, and we went to the oldest hospital last. And the doors of the patient's room were like these little Western bar, swinging doors. I mean, they weren't even full doors. They just had these little swinging, louvered, like shutters, like you'd see it, in your window. And we went in, and there was a woman in her late 90s. I can't remember what she had done, but she had either had a gallbladder or had some sort of little bit of a bowel obstruction or something, and he had worked on her. He had operated on her. And he introduced me to all these patients. He said, this is Joe Kersey. He's a medical student applying for a surgical residency here. And I said, I'm very glad to meet you. Thank you for letting me be here, talk with you and see you. And she says, Kersey. She says, well, I grew up in Oregonia, Ohio, and my family doctor was John Kersey. It's like lightning struck out of the blue. I said, well, he was my great uncle. I said, do you remember when he used to fly that kite out over the Little Miami River? I said, oh, yes, everybody loved it. I did not see Aldermeyer's face at that time, but he was behind me. But you could just feel the beams of goodness and happiness and acceptance radiating off this man. And so we had that encounter. It was very nice. And, it's like a blast out of the blue for me, So when we get done, and it's about 4:30, 5 in the afternoon. I mean, when I said we spent the entire day together, we spent the entire day together. Oh, in the meantime, there was also, around noon, there was also grand rounds. And he says, I think I can tell you now that I think, and this statement has stayed with me all my life. I think I can tell you now that I can say that you can be made to fit into our system here. Let's repeat that. You can be made to fit into our system here. I said, oh, thank you. Thank you. I said, obviously you have to wait till match day. And I said, oh, okay, thank you. Thank you. And I said, I thank you for this day. It's a day that I'll remember the rest of my life, even if I don't come here. I said, which is not to imply. But, the statement at the end and the statement at the beginning with this guy waiting to give this guy a cup of coffee, that pretty much bookended my decision process. Plus, I wouldn't have had the physical stamina to go through a program like that. But I'll tell you, it was a hell of a great day. And I was delighted to meet this woman that had been taken care of by my great uncle. So on that note, I'm going to say, now I've got 2 more stories to tell you, but I'm not going to tell you in this video. So on that note, I'm going to say bye-bye, YouTubers.